Hello, welcome to FPL IQ with me, planner, teacher, and chat box, also known as Tien, Lucian, and Ryan. And today we are going to be going through just a very quick fire chat on Gabriel, yes or no sell, Bruno, yes or no sell, and just a little bit of a general introduction, chinwag about leaks in FPL. Then we're going to go through our interesting facts and finds of the game week. So is there anything that stood out to us in that first game week? Because we can't look at extended data because there's only been one game week. But was there anything that popped out to us that made us think we could add them to our team? Or is that a team that we can target, or just something we found generally interesting? Then I'm just going to chat a little bit on a player spotlight, someone who's been massively sold, who I think it could turn out to be a mistake, but because they didn't get the big points, that's why people don't want him. Then we're going to go through 4 key matches for this game week. So I've said before, I'm going to talk about every single game in a game week. We're going to talk about the ones that are important to FPL managers, ones that are going to have players or teams that we're really interested in. So that's Spurs, Man Utd, Wolves, Brighton, West Ham, Chelsea, and Manchester City, Newcastle. Then our weekly segment is going to be, this will be a rotating part where every week we have a position, or a defender, midfielder, forward, and a wild card. So that person could choose any player from any position, and we'll track that player for 4 game weeks. And the final point, which will be very, very, very brief, is who we think the best captain is, because that is going. So we'll get into the introductions, hellos. So Tien, how you doing? Feeling good? And Lucian, you've already finished 3 books of notes for all your shows and things this week. Are you feeling good?
All you.
I'm really sorry for that, but no one heard what you said. What he said was heartwarming. It's changed my life. I can never. That's unrepeatable. It's touched my soul, and I'm so sorry, everyone. Everyone has missed that. Okay, Ryan, how you doing?
Well, at least now, hopefully, people can hear me. So yeah, I'm doing well. Looking forward to it. We've started really well on a great technical issue, but hopefully the stream is working in the chat. If you can let us know, please do.
Yeah, it is now. I can see on my OBS. So yeah, and Tien actually didn't say anything. Tien was miming the whole time, so you didn't miss anything from him. So yeah. Just so we've just another technical error on the screen here. I don't know if you guys can just tune in and have a look on that image. That's, I mean, I didn't want to bring this up, but it just oh no, I can't get it off. It's my bench boost with 102 points.
The
Just put the
102 looks big enough.
Just put the 102.
Can't see anything.
Oh no.
Sorry, can't see anything.
Oh,
Yes,
dear
there's a glitch.
me. No. Oh, well, all right.
The glitch in the matrix.
We'll leave that there for now. We'll just put that on the screen for now. So we're going to start with some quick fire questions. Gabriel sell, yes or no? Tien.
No, I'm keeping it.
You'd keep Gabriel for 1 more week?
Yep.
Okay.
At least 1 more week. Yep.
Just because you don't think he's dropped, you just think it might just be a one-off or an occasional thing?
Yeah, I think so. I think there was rumor that he was late for a team meeting or something, so it could just be the disciplinary thing, and hopefully he will be kissing and hugging a terror, and everything will be fine again.
Hopefully not.
But we'll find out, I guess.
That'll be a big distraction. Lucian, how are you feeling?
Oh, am I okay?
No, just about the Gabriel.
Well, yes.
Don't
Oh,
the inspirational
yeah,
speech.
sorry.
I don't want to repeat that. It was too
I
emotional.
was just gonna say I feel like hugging Arteta too, because I'm glad that I have Saliba instead of Gabriel. I mean, yeah, sell if you have other problems, such as if you're an owner of Gabriel and Stones, possibly. But yeah, I mean, hold if you have a decent bench, really.
Ryan, Gabriel, sell, hold.
I would hold, like Lucian said, if you had a decent bench, or if you can get to Chilwell without
Or
having to take a
James.
hit. Yeah, or James as well. Yeah, without having to take a hit.
Which is I would say sell, unless you've got a bigger problem like Kevin De Bruyne. Unless there's like an injury or a real problem. I did a discussion about this yesterday about the feeling of just people will roll this game week because they've got that plan, but everyone has a plan until you're punched in the face, right? And game week 1 has shown us, or some people enough to say that, James and Chilwell looked absolutely fantastic against Liverpool. They've got an incredible run of fixtures, and if you've got 0.5 million in the bank and I've got nothing else to do, you could hold for 1 week's more worth of information, but that's not attacking, right? If you get James in against a very average / poor West Ham side who don't really have attacking creativity or threat, you're attacking it. So that's be with me as well. And Bruno. We'll go in reverse then, Ryan. Bruno Fernandes.
Hold. I would hold. Even if I know a lot of people are talking about Madison and whatnot, but I would still hold because you got him in for a reason. I feel like there's attacking potential in this game from both sides, and there's probably points to be had potentially.
Fair, Lucian, Bruno, sell, hold.
Hold on to Bruno Guimaraes for sure. Bruno Fernandes, right?
Bruno Fernandes.
So yes. Well, it just goes to show, right? If you are the captain, you might not necessarily be the fulcrum of the entire team. I think Bruno Fernandes will have his purposes under Erik ten Hag, and it does feel like the boss is the boss man, not Bruno. So I'd say sell if you know who exactly you want to get. I think it's a bit too early for James Maddison, just a little bit, because I think Spurs themselves aren't really a fully cohesive unit. So unless you're looking at a real convincing differential like Foden or I don't even know who's left. Oh yes, a Liverpool midfielder, if you can get the Salah, sure. But if you want to punt on somebody like Diaz or Soboslai, who we'll talk about later, I think, yeah, it's worth the punt. I do feel that it's worth the punt.
Again, Bruno, buy, sell, hold?
Definitely not buy. If I had him, I probably would hold for at least another week. As Ryan said, you've got him for a reason. Like, just come back and ask yourself, like, why did you get him in the first place? And what has changed? Like yes, Ten Hag is still kind of trying to figure out how Mount and Bruno can play together and all that sort of thing. But it's 1 game week. It's just too early to say. And did you watch how Spurs play with their new keeper? Yeah, if you did, then perhaps hold.
I have the same opinion in a way as I do with Gabriel. For me, if I had nothing else to do and I didn't have Gabriel, I would sell Bruno Fernandes. Because I've seen enough so I have Bruno Fernandes and I had thought about hopefully he wasn't going to be what I thought he could become with Mount in the side, and he has become what I was worried could happen. When Mount went up in the first 45 minutes, I'd already told myself I was selling Bruno Fernandes. And then 65, 70 minutes when Mount went off, Bruno had a little bit more freedom. And then at one point, I think it was like left wing almost. And it was like, oh, but then I have to backtrack and think, well, hold on. The next game is going to be at Mount back in that midfield. So what's the point in me? Again, I could roll it and give it another week. And I know Spurs are poor, but I'm not getting Man United's right back because Spurs are poor. You want a Man United striker or pitch, and I don't think that's Bruno. Unless Ten Hag completely scraps it and just goes, he scraps it and he just decides, all right, we're not going to do that, and Bruno's going to be the 10. But the fact that you've got 2 8s and Mount was the one making the forward runs massively devalued Bruno. And the last little thing about leaks, just we had a big one. I think, did we all?
Cool.
I heard that. Did we all miss out on? Did we all keep Gabriel?
Oh well, didn't start with Gabriel.
Okay, you didn't have him, but
No.
Tien Lucen, you guys don't have Gabriel, or
I did.
Saliba.
you
Yeah,
chose
I
Saliba
had
or
him, man.
switched?
Yeah, remember I told you about like Saliba tends to score better offensively in the first half of the season. Yeah, I went with that.
But Tien, you got hit with the Gabriel.
Yep.
You
I got
missed
him,
that
and I didn't. I missed that. Yeah.
Now I was always Saliba. I was always Saliba, and then I added Gabriel because I took Martinelli out, and I missed Gabriel that way. So leaks. We'll go back to Ryan then. What are your opinions on leaks, or do you think there's a way to solve it? Unstoppable.
I don't think it's good for the game because it creates an unfair advantage, especially for us, most of us, because we are from in the different time zone. That's like not very helpful for FPL managers. Especially like the first 4 game weeks, the deadlines are like, at least for TN and myself, it's like 3 in the morning. So unless you're crazy like me, yeah. So unless you're crazy like me and staying up for deadline streams, most managers are not going to get up for that. So, and like, I don't know what's the solution, because okay, the City leaks came, we kind of expected it, but the Arsenal leaks I didn't expect, like almost a day early. That's just like crazy. Like, so you can't. There is no proper solution, because some will say move it to the deadline. Well, we saw the Arsenal league come and the game wasn't even on that day. Some will say move it and a day early. Well, that's the same thing that happened to the Arsenal league. So I don't know what exactly is the solution. I feel like people get leaks and they just wait till the last minute to kind of like leak it so that they get the maximum amount of traffic as well.
100%.
So, yeah. So I think it's part of the game now, and unfortunately we have to deal with it.
Lucien, what do you think about leak?
Well, if you move the deadline to the kickoff time, or like 5 minutes before kickoff, right? You at least get to see the official lineups before the whole thing begins. I think the only exception is if you have a Friday night game and you can't do anything about Saturday, right? And then, right, so be it. But it's quite unlikely that you get the Gabriel situation again, where you before Friday night you hear something about Saturday. That's really, really early. I do feel I've got nothing against leaks, for the record, and I just feel that it's the people who share leaks that are irresponsible. I do feel that if you get leaks, fair game, but you are not obliged to you have the obligation to not share it, because those leaks are your information for a reason. And I know that a lot of content creators have all these special arrangements with people who give them leaks and all that. I mean, I do know people, I have family that's in the gambling industry that hears about these things early in the morning, because they go to the football ground and they watch training and they hear what the manager says to his players and things like that. So if you know people who are part of the industry who get that sort of early information, fair. But you are not obliged to come up with rumors or half justified speculation. I know a guy that does this. I know a guy that says he might be injured. That's terrible, because it's not even a confirmed rumor. Because, right, I don't know whether you guys remember what happened after that. Immediately after the leak happened, deadline passed. A lot of us saw Gabriel. And then what happened was, the next morning, the first bit of news was that Gabriel traveled with the squad. Everyone was laughing at, oh, leaks, haha, it's fake. And then Gabriel got benched. It was like a double switcheroo, That was terrible, and none of it is within our control. So I do feel that actually nothing to do with the leaks. It all had to do with the content creators that shares those leaks, especially those with huge audiences.
Well, they said
it's completely irresponsible.
They said it wasn't an injury though, which Arteta must be absolutely fuming. Arteta must be furious because no one would have, like, if you were in a predictor. So Tien, I think you're part of the predicting team for Man United, right? If in the Arsenal one, maybe they did it before that news. And surely if you were an Arsenal predictor, you would never have suggested Gabriel was getting dropped. And he's explained his reasons why, because the left-sided players like Zinchenko aren't fit and ready, so he wanted to invert from the right. Tactically, I understand it makes complete sense, but no one predicted that to happen. And the fact that that news came out 24 hours ish before the match started, and everyone knows about it, and that was your sort of like secret plan or your tactic in the back pocket, and it's come out. Leaks are part of the game. It's simple. Move it to deadline or move it a day before, and then that's it. But you can't blame people for taking the information. You can't. And look at it. Let's say I was a leaker. I was an in the know account. Look at the numbers they get. Let's say I get the team news 2 hours before the deadline. If I just do one tweet saying, okay, here's the team, guys, enjoy yourself, 11 players, that's great. But if I'm trying to get more popular or more numbers or earn money or whatever, I'll just do 2 players every 20 minutes, and everyone's going to be coming to my Twitter page and refreshing, and everyone's going to come back next week. So I understand, like, I'm not saying it's good, I'm not saying it's nice, it's maybe arguably immoral, but unfortunately it's something you massively understand. So leaks is nothing we're going to be able to stop. Move the game, the game deadline, either straight up to kickoff, and then they'll say, oh well, what about the games on like Monday night? If you get but at least that's only going to be like one fixture rather than because all the other ones you'll likely know if they're 3:00 games. So just move the deadline. I would love to see FPL, just as a small quick side note, potentially do what like the European fantasy game did, and that was being able to sub out your players that you have on your bench, and you can twist or stick, right? So say you start with a Nottingham Forest player against Sheffield United and they blank, you can sub in one of your non-played players to see if they beat that score, because that'll make your whole 15 squad more diverse.
That's for the Champions League and also even the World Cup fantasy. All of them used to do that exactly.
And I just think that's a lot more fun. We'll have more variety of squads. Do you just stick to 11? Do you spread your funds really evenly? It makes us look at more players and things like that. Anyway, Tien, last point about leaks.
Yeah, so not a big fan. It's really ruining the game, especially for us in a different time zone as well. And I did tweet it after that Gabriel situation as well. It wasn't just FPL and FPL players, right? It's the clubs themselves as well. Like given the audience and the coverage of the news, like Atera must be fuming for his plan to be revealed to everyone, like nearly 24 hours before the game. In terms of solutions, I heard Mark from Black Box. I think he said something that it seems quite, reasonable. So, instead of having just one single deadline, you've got a transfer deadline, let's say about 24 hours before the first game. The transfer deadline is, so you stop the transfer, and then you've got another deadline, let's say at kickoff or after the official lineup of the first game, for you to make do the lineup, so you can sub people in and out within your team based on the lineup, but you can't make any transfer. And I think that probably would solve some of the problem. And it's one of the biggest one is the server, like the FPL server, because now everyone will be waiting to like 15 minutes before the deadline to do their transfers, and that will, like, no amount of money can be put into to have servers that will be capable of handling that kind of traffic, especially when Man City is playing first game. So it's going to be a problem every single week when you've got early team news and Man City is playing, for example. So that could be a solution, and as you said, like allowing you to do that sort of substituting your bench and all that after a certain time as well could solve some of the problem. Because I mean, like the Gabriel situation, like if I was to listen to that news, I probably would would still keep him, but I probably would put him on the bench, right? Because if it was an injury, then there was a chance that he would come on, and he did come on. So I would rather leave him on the bench and get someone else in, for example, like especially if you got a Chilwell. Like how many Chilwell owners that benched him and looked at Gabriel 1-pointer? That will just completely ruin their game, and they had nothing that they could do because they didn't have that link. So I don't think it's healthy for the game. It's going to be very difficult to solve, a problem to solve, but I think the FPL game themselves, they can do something about it, but I don't think they will.
We talked a little bit about draft pre-stream because up our own sort of draft between ourselves, and they have 2 deadlines. Right? They have like a waiver transfer.
Yeah.
They have a transfer period, and then they
So waiver 24 hours before, and then you got the free agent for that 24 hours until the deadline.
So they have that kind of capacity in place to have a switch between deadlines. It's they'll have to hold the program and stuff, but they won't. They'll cop out. They'll say maybe next season. They don't want to touch it. They don't care. They've got almost 9 million players signed up already. It's free. They massively. Right. So, with a heavy heart, we're gonna have to take my rank off the screen. I know you guys are all upset about that. Lovely picture celebrating the European Super Cup win yesterday. As we go into our interesting facts and finds, you can just pretend there's some kind of theme ahead for this part of the show. We'll start with Lucian because he has a few points to say. We'll go through them. What are your interesting facts and finds? Key things you learned game week? Help us beyond.
Well, I think quite a number of content creators have appeared on Twitter before this show to express that game week 1 is about figuring out which lessons you can learn from and which ones are basically a dud, right? So I'd like to weigh in on that conversation before I bring out the facts, because we have to understand that we treat certain teams with a pinch of salt. And, even we treat certain teams playing against certain teams, right, with a huge grain of salt. Because any team that plays against Manchester City, for example, will definitely play their most defensive formation. Similarly, if you have 2 sides that play against each other, part of the Big Six, Chelsea, Liverpool, you know that they will almost never replicate the same tactic as against other teams. So I think at this stage, really, we are targeting the big versus small matchups. And sometimes we have to understand that whenever we evaluate a team, we have to look at whether these things are likely to appear next game. Because if we don't, and we assume that they do, you would make little basic errors like myself, where I assumed that Rico Henry would be fantastic going down the left against Fulham's weak right side. But we know that Brentford in general, they alternate between a 3-5-2 and a 4-3-3. So they went 3-5-2 defensive away to Spurs. At home to Spurs. But we know that going up against Fulham, they'll definitely transition into a more offensive 4-3-3. So Rico Henry's influence might not be as great as we think. It just works that way. And we have to understand these dynamics before we go about saying that, this person's stats stood out, yada, yada, yada. So this leads to my first stat of the week, which involves the Man City game, where even across a period of 90 minutes, we have to be aware that City now are going through different formation changes. And as we talked about during our Man City preview, Rob, City are basically taking their approach and they're driving it to the extreme. Like their counter press, pushing it way up, way higher. Their offense, right? Bringing the ball into midfield. They're not just shifting a defender into midfield, they're also shifting their goalkeeper in line with the centre backs. They're not just having a narrow formation with the fullbacks out wide. Phil Foden from left wing can go all the way to the right half space now. He has that license because now they have Kovacic behind them. So we're seeing all these. I can come up with all these beautiful numbers such as City's 2-2-6 to the 2-3-5 to the 4-2-5 that I talked about on Ryan's show. yesterday. And really, it doesn't make sense because we don't know which one will appear next game against Newcastle. So, really, at this stage, we have to split our predictions into formation type evaluations and situational type evaluations. So, if we feel that City are going to benefit from a left or right side, or even a number 9 situation, fine, go with it. But in City's case, when you watch the game against Burnley, they don't pick a particular side to bully Burnley. They pick a player. They just look for Haaland and they draw fouls. Simple as that. It's a very simple game plan, and even though the movements all across the pitch are complex, teams like City, teams with elite talent, United, Spurs in some sense, but mostly City, Liverpool, and Arsenal, they will leverage on their best players. And if you can win the simple way, why do you have to win it the hard way, right? So that's what they do. And I think that's something we have to, people debate about whether we should buy Chilwell because he's super attacking. If that's the simple plan, if the plan is to get the ball to Chilwell because he's super advanced, go for it, right? It's really as simple as that. At least in the opening stages of the season, you go with what works because there are so many other transfers that can potentially come in. So, I mean, I've got plenty of stats here. And after looking through them, I realized that a lot of them are potentially not replicable over the next few games. So I'll just rattle through them, like what is potentially useful and what is potentially not. So things that I find are potentially trivia, right? Arsenal's dominance down the right side. Anyone that watched the game will know that in the first half, everything went through Bukayo Saka. Can we predict the same thing to occur next match against, who do Arsenal play again?
Crystal Palace.
Was it Palace? Yeah, right. Will we expect the same thing to happen against Palace? Well, that depends. If we feel that Gabriel is going to be benched again, then yeah, everything will flow through Bukayo Saka. But if we expect Gabriel to start, everything changes. So there are other things like how Leno's huge performance against Everton, absolute quality. I can go on about all the different post-shot XG values that Bern Leno saved. But that means nothing, especially when you go up against Brentford, who are shot shy themselves, and they don't have players that intentionally aim for like the bottom corner. You know, they take first-time shots. They are ruthless in the sense that they're just willing to hit opposition goalkeepers when they're not aware, and then they're okay with that. You know, so am I going to say that Ben Leno is going to have another huge performance against Brentford? I wouldn't say so at all. So what I do find reliable are things that are new, shiny, and most likely providing a competitive edge for their teams. Most important, Newcastle's left-hand side, which previously never even had a winger. I think their best winger on the left side was Alan Saint-Maximin last season, arguably. Right? Couldn't name a better one because Miguel Almiron played on the right. And now they have two. They have Harvey Barnes and they have Anthony Gordon fighting for that same spot on the left. That will almost certainly be a new shiny edge for Newcastle should they come up against another side that is weak on their right side. Now, obviously, Man City are not going to be weak on their right, but after that game, almost certainly we will be targeting Newcastle's left side to own. Same thing with how West Ham took very poor quality shots in the box. You can sing praises about Jared Bowen all day. Their shots are going to be terrible in terms of XG, and you're going to be relying on wonder strikes from outside, just as Bowen's goal showed us. And should we be happy with that? If we own a West Ham player, yeah, we should, because that is exactly how West Ham behave, and that's how we can expect West Ham to behave over the next few weeks. So that really is all that I can say for now in terms of the stats that I found.
Right, great. Just a couple more about the XG shots you said about Leno in the file, and Hodgson didn't make a tactical sub, and Trippier not dominating chance. And the ones that I came across were, despite Man United not conceding, very, very fortunately, they lost 22 tackles, which is more than double all but two of the teams in the Premier League. So they lost a lot of tackles. 3 teams created 0 big chances. If I told you Sheffield United and Burnley were 2 of them, you'd be surprised. If I told you Arsenal was the 3rd one, perhaps you might be. No big chances for Arsenal, despite scoring the goals. And despite dominating the game and deservedly winning, Crystal Palace lost possession and also had the most bad touches out of all Premier League teams. So for me, that shows that they're perhaps being a little bit brave on the ball. However, it could also mean that they could get countered or exploited by teams other than Sheffield United, because that is such a target. So they lost most possession and they've got the most bad touch. And it feels like a lot of the time that's Jordan Ayew. Because 1 minute, I've said before, 1 minute he looks like Ronaldinho, the next he looks like Ronald McDonald, because he has a beautiful touch and then a terrible touch like a minute later. Tien, what's your interesting fact or find of the week?
Yeah, so I just have one game that I want to focus on, and teacher mentioned that Newcastle, that they got sort of the left wing attack, and they exploit Aston Villa high line very, very well. So Aston Villa set up in sort of that flat 4-4-2 formation that with the high line that seemed to do very well toward the end of the last season, but Newcastle was there to exploit it very well, and with all the sort of the late runners on the wings, and especially after the Ming injury, obviously that make it even worse, and they seem to have no answer to the Newcastle sort of press and hard fast runners on either side. However, obviously, we shouldn't take that just one game and say, oh no, Aston Villa is now bad and Newcastle is the attacking team to get, because we'll have to see what Aston Villa, or how they will set up moving forward. And despite all that, I think Aston Villa attacking assets look great. They created 12 shots in the box, 2 big chances. And 1.77 xG, so the like of Watkins and Diaby are still very, very good assets to own.
It feels like we didn't learn. There's some teams and players I felt we learned a lot from in this game week, and I think with Aston Villa and Newcastle, they for me are quite similar in terms of quality. And I think Aston Villa maybe over-regarded themselves and did that high line, because if they were away to Man United or Man City, they wouldn't have played like this, and it wouldn't have been 5-1. They just set up differently. So it feels as though Villa learned a big lesson here, and we didn't learn that much from Newcastle, because now teams equal to them will not go to St. James's Park to do this. I don't even think we'll learn that much necessarily from the Manchester City game, because they're going to set up Newcastle will set up differently. They're not going to go and play like this. They might do. We might learn that they're going to suddenly be title challengers. That's perfectly fine. But it's against when they come against a team they should dominate, which might not be till like game week 6. That's when we'll know the full extent. But yeah, Aston Villa, I think they just sort of thought, what we're going to do. We're going to go to Newcastle, play the high line. We're better than they. Kind of being put in the place, and really, it was just tactically wrong. And I'm surprised they didn't change it. Ryan, what were your interesting facts or finds this game week?
It's going to be based off like the games I watched. I'm going to start with the Chelsea one. So I've noticed they started with like a 3-4-3 formation, but not exactly like a 3-4-3 we'll see on paper, because I felt Chukwuemeka, he was playing more of like a number 10 rather than a winger, which left the entire left side to just Chilwell, which is why we saw Chilwell going really attacking. But at the same time, that left space for Trent, Salah, and Szoboszlai to exploit. And we saw in that first 30 minutes, we saw Liverpool also getting chances. The goal also came, and Salah also had really good options. He hit the post. Obviously, one goal was ruled out. But then there was a slight change, I feel like, from Poch, where he also mentioned in his post-match press conference about a 4-3-1. But it felt like more that Chilwell was getting a bit more backup now on that left-hand side, and the formation was a bit more not lopsided. And that kind of also, I felt like Liverpool's chance creation also kind of dropped. And you saw the Salah become a bit more quiet in the second half. Chelsea got a bit more of control. So I feel like this is something we probably will have to wait and see from Poch as well. He's playing like a back three when they have the ball, and then switch into a back four when they don't have it. So if Chilwell is going to be switching into that left attacking mid spot, I mean, that's really good for us as FPL managers. But then now they're linked with Olise as well, so we'll have to wait and see what that changes in terms of system. So that's one that I found very interesting. The other thing was the United game. Now, obviously, Wolves played really well, but I thought it was slightly a game of two halves, where I felt the game kind of flipped on its head after Martinez got his yellow card. That meant that he wasn't able to press for tackles. He had to be a bit more cautious. There was an instance where Matheus Cunha had already run past him and he couldn't tackle because he was already on yellow. Then he got subbed off. And if you look at the first half versus second half stats, I think in the first half, Wolves had 0.28 XG with 5 shots and 0 shots on target. Flip it over to the second half, had 2.07 XG, 18 shots and 6 on target. So it's like it's almost a tale of two halves. I felt like we kind of have to be. We might have to consider a few factors before going and saying, "Oh, the entire United defense is pretty bad." I felt like there was a situation where both Martinez and Shaw on yellows kind of helped with that.
Well, I don't think they're too bad because Varane was incredible for me.
Oh yeah.
I think the defense is amazing. I just want to talk just a quick point then on Chelsea. I think Pochettino has absolutely had a cracking game there. I think he's made a mug of Klopp in that one because they both have the exact same problem of not having that holding midfield defensive-minded player. They both need one before that game, right? And both had the best player sort of available. Chelsea didn't have Nkunku. And I just think his 4-2-3-1 and putting Chilwell as a left wing to sort of follow Trent around. Trent did one beautiful pass. I think wasn't he the one who assisted Salah's offside?
Yes,
goal?
for the offside. Yep.
But that was it. Like I saw nothing. And you know, that's the thing with Trent, and we talked about this a lot in preseason. I won't talk about this for just the idea that you can't have Trent for 8 million and be preying on that glory, world-class cutting through ball every single game week. You want a player in your side, if you're looking at attacking return, to consistently create chances, not hope for one beautiful Hail Mary. Like Salah's assist was absolutely like millimeter perfect. You can't expect him to do that every single week. So putting Chilwell out there, like, not so people just think Chilwell had a blinding game and he was so attacking down that left side, but he was also nullifying Trent. So he's not done just a fantastic job in terms of having a goal disallowed, getting assist, and being arguably man of the match, but he's also taken out Trent in that game. So props to Poch because I think so. That's all our facts and finds. Just so player spotlight. This is one that if someone stuck out to us, or you know, we see something we don't think many people see, we'll put this in. And this is mine. This last season, I started the season with Miguel Almiron. In that very first game, I thought this guy is absolutely. Did a player spotlight on him on Twitter, and turned out to be true. Now, I'm not saying that Eze is going to be doing that, but he's had 20,000 transfers in and 119,000 transfers out. And that is purely outcome bias. That is purely the fact that pretty much every single 6.5 million player that we were considering before the season got something. Mbuemo, Mitoma, Diaby, like any 6.5 million, even if you wanted to risk on the likes of Barnes, who came off the bench and blew everyone away, like everyone except Eze at Sheffield United got a return. And that is why he's got, you know, he's the most sold, he's the second most sold midfielder after Kevin De Bruyne. And if you take out all injuries and suspensions, etc., he's like the most sold player in FPL right now. For me, it's just a long-term hold. It's easy. And look, I'm not trying to have a dig at other content creators, but every like transfer talk or watch list video or anything, I can tell you, I've not watched them, but I can tell you they're going to be telling you to look at Maddison. They're going to be telling you to look at Mbuemo, and you can sit there and say, oh, it's all about the fixtures. They've got good fixtures coming up. But if they hadn't have returned, Maddison got arguably two quite, like, when I said about Salah's amazing assist, I don't think Maddison had clean assist. And it's easy to sit here and say, oh, Maddison's on my watch list because they've got good fixtures from game week 3 and he's just got 2 assists. Mbuemo scored a penalty and missed the sitter. Diaby scored, even though that you're going to see the same things. But with Eze, he's got Arsenal. People are not going to be looking into him. So it's not just something different, but it's a player I have, and it's a player that he's absolutely the creative talisman. He's what we thought he was going to be before the season started. I just think he's going to be massively underappreciated. He's already been mass sold. And people noticed that Palace dominated with an XGI of 0.92. I've already talked earlier about them being brave because they lost the ball so many times and had bad touches. And that, I don't care about. Defensively, I did because I've got the goalkeeper and the defender in that game week. But in terms of attack, that's what I want. I want them to be brave. The amazing thing about him is if you ask me where he played for Crystal Palace in attack, I would tell you everywhere. I would tell you he came up on the left, he came up on the right, he came down the middle, didn't drop deep, but he dropped as like a 10, or he'd go up beyond. He'd find himself in the box, he'd find himself on the wing. He takes every single set piece. He's 6.5 million. And Hodgson is just like, this isn't a negative from Hodgson, it's sort of that old school kind of management of, he has a tactic, he has a plan, but he's like, you are professional footballers, you go and do you. And Eze will frustrate you massively. He'll stroll around the pitch. He won't challenge for headers. He won't press the defense down. I don't care. I don't have him because as a football fan, he frustrates me. As an FPL fan, I don't care because every single player wants to give the ball to this man on that pitch. He almost scored himself he must have got, by the way, like 3 or 4 nutmegs in this game. I must have seen him meg like 4 players. He's absolutely class. He got in the box, he got through, and it was going in, and the only reason it didn't is because the defender's standing leg blocked the ball, not the one he threw out to block it. Unlucky. He learns inside a game. He took a free kick, he put it right on Edouard's head, but Edouard either couldn't get the power on it or the cross was too weak, and it was a simple save. But it was a pretty clear chance for Edouard. Later on, he learnt from that. He whips the free kick in with more power. It gets on Anderson's head, and Foderingham did another fantastic save. So it wasn't just the fact that Palace deserved the win, and they've got the stats to show it, and they dominated. And I know they're not going to play Sheffield United every week, but every single key chance. He also put in, I said to Teacher, I know he's to Lucian, I know he's a big fan of Schlupp. Schlupp was in on goal in the box, and it was another fantastic save from Foderingham. I know it's not going to be every week. I've got a benching headache every week because I've got this man. And I just think if people, I'm not saying bring him in, but if you're looking at long term and you've got nothing to do, or you're looking, I think he rotates really well with Diaby, someone who I'm really interested in. These are 2 players that all the 6.5 millions are doing great, but other people are going to be looking elsewhere. But I think I'm going to be looking at this guy, and I know he's got Arsenal, Brentford, Wolves, and Villa in the next 4, which isn't great. But again, if Villa go out with that high line, he could be getting behind it. He just excites me. He just gives me that feeling of I like having him in my team. I look at Bruno Fernandes in my side and I think I'm not happy with him. I didn't see anything that Bruno did that excited me. Rashford can explode, but his eyes like I watch this guy. Every Palace player wants to give him the ball. He does everything for this side. If Crystal Palace score a goal and Etse's nothing to do with it, I don't know how they're going to score a goal. You can counter that with the problem that Elise could be going to Chelsea. It's very, very likely, which is a huge negative. If they can just go and get one more attacking player and not just have Ayew and Edouard in that attack, he's going to be involved in everything. He's like the definition of talisman. He does everything you want a player to do. And if he would have got just one assist or anything in that game, there is absolutely no way people would have been selling him in the droves that they've been selling him. Just purely outcome bias. And I'm happy people are selling him because he's going to be in and out of my team and is why I started the season. Any thoughts from you guys on Eze? Lucian?
Well,
I was going to
cool.
suggest for you to do Bruno the Eze. I mean, it's so obvious. I mean, after the Arsenal game, of course. After the Arsenal game, do Bruno the Eze. It's easy. Save your transfer and do 2 free transfers, right? Bruno the Eze, and upgrade someone else.
Well, I've got Eze, so. But I would be Bruno to Diaby. That's where I would go. Ryan, thoughts on Eze?
Well, I didn't watch the game. I watched the extended highlights though. But from watching the extended highlights, he looked involved in almost every clip that they showed. So I think he's a really good option. The fixtures are on and off. I guess you can rotate it with Diaby then. And to be honest, even Diaby, he is going to be an explosive player. Because he was really good in the Bundesliga. And if he can carry that form over into Aston Villa, that would be a really interesting 6.5. Potentially might rise really fast as well. That's Villa's fixtures turn.
Yeah, and that's why I'm thinking of my benching headache is I've got Matoma, I've got João Pedro, but Bruno sat there and I'm just thinking, just make him Diaby. Like, what am I doing? and play Diaby and Eze. But Tien, thoughts on Eze, Alice?
Yeah, just before I go into Eze, there's a bit of a breaking news. Chelsea captain Reece James has picked up a fresh hamstring injury.
Of course, yeah.
Due for a scan later on today. So that's a tweet that Ben Diddery retweeted as well, and he said that the withdrawal on Sunday was fatigue related, and this could be a new injury that he might have picked up.
And that's James
in training. So Reece James. Yeah.
John Stones has also injured his hamstring.
Also, Olise has signed a new contract with Crystal Palace.
Oh, there we go. All right, you've made my decision. There you go. That we don't talk about our teams. I only joked earlier, right, when I was showing my rank and stuff. But the point of our group is not to sit here and say, you know, my rank is 10k. I mean, my rank's, 3k. But we don't talk about our teams or our captains. But players are in our teams who everyone's talking about, and for me, that's I'll do Bruno to Diaby probably, and then think about it to bench. Is he actually signed a new contract? Elise is.
Yeah.
You pulling my leg? You teasing me?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Because
anyway,
I wasn't going to do. Just one more point. I wasn't. I was going to wait on James anyway because I'm looking at Enzo Fernandez.
That's good.
But for 5 minutes. But yeah, go on, Ed. Say what are you thinking, Tien? That was your fault. You sidetracked us.
Sorry. No, I mean I agree with a lot of the things he said, and I didn't have him because I didn't have a spot for him. But anyone who had Eze for the first game week, you must have got him for a reason, right? You can't just look at like, oh, I'm just getting him for this one game week and see how he looks and then shift him out. Well, we've learned nothing. Like, he was exactly what you thought he would be. He was a talisman. He got everything that Crystal Palace would get. So if you were saying that, oh, now his features are getting harder, well, no, the features was the same. So yeah, I see no reason to sell him now. You either didn't get him in the first place, or you at least give him a few more game weeks, because after this game week he got Brentford away and Wolves at home. So I mean, not too bad, right? So yeah, I see no reason to sell him at all. Yeah, as you said, if I have Bruno and Eze, I'd rather sell Bruno.
And you said it yourself, like, you got him for a reason, but we didn't. Like I said, he's like, I got Bruno for a reason, I got Eze for a reason. Eze has proven the reason I wanted him. Unfortunately, Bruno Fernandes has sort of proven I was gonna be right, and he's not what I wanted. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about him because there's no point in us sitting here and telling you Maddison's a good pick. We know Maddison's a good pick, especially from game week 3. Richarlison will be from game week 3. We know all that. Just players and mass selling this could be a huge mistake. But let's get into our matchups. Lucian's going to be the one always kicks us off on these. So Spurs and Manchester United, big game, similar-ish sort of issues of betting in new tactics, new players, new managers even. Lucian, how are you feeling about, or what you're going to say or think about Spurs against?
Right. So it's control versus lack of control, isn't it? I mean, okay, so we've got to look at this from two different perspectives, right? Because for FPL, all you do really is just keep whoever you own and just pray and hope for the best. It's like a very similar situation to owning Chilwell and Salah last in game week 1. So if you own Rashford and Madison, like I'd actually congratulate you because both teams right now do look like they're playing for 4-3 rather than 1-0. So really, I think to set the stage for Spurs against Man United, the lesson is not for this game week itself. It comes down to their reaction to their results last week. Both teams arguably did not play their best version of their plan A. Spurs barely dominated the half spaces. United barely had actual control over the game because they just couldn't dominate Wolves. Well, to the extent that they wanted to. They still had 60% possession in the first half, but it just wasn't to that extent where they can roll over teams 3-0. So, reaction. What I'd like to gauge out of you boys is what would Spurs and Man United's reactions be philosophically so that they can pull off their plan A's and their usual tactics? Because from my perspective at least, it does not look like their players have the confidence right now. They still need to play their game, iron out certain mistakes, and then learn from it and move on. Because there's a lot of new personnel, a lot of fresh faces. Garnacho on the left wing. For Spurs, you've got a brand new midfield. It's a lot. It's a lot to adjust to very quickly. And I think for Spurs, I'd like to ask everybody what they would think on how they would replace Harry Kane. Would Richarlison do the same job? Let's start there.
Is that a question or is that your analysis of Spurs?
Well, I think it's definitely the premise where we start our predictions and our analysis and the way we look at the game.
So the way that they'll have it is I don't think they'll go out and replace Harry Kane. I think Richarlison will be. He is the kind of player that Ange wants in that position, and I think they'll just go and sign a backup or someone to challenge Richarlison. And because Kane is unique, right? He's the player that drops deep and fingers can go forward. Angie Postecoglou, never going to say his name right.
Postecoglou?
Yep, that's the one. Big Ange, we'll just call him. He doesn't play like that. He doesn't want that player to drop in. He wants them to press. He wants them to stay high. He wants them to stay middle. So, yeah, he's not going to replace. You can't replace Harry Kane. Certainly not for even 100 million. But he doesn't want to. Kane's not his kind of player. Richarlison is, and that's why come game week 3, game week 4, you're going to probably be getting.
I guess it'll be interesting to see what happens with maybe he doesn't replace Richarlison, but does he continue to play Richarlison up front? Or would he maybe switch Heung-min Son even more centrally? I know they have Solomon on the bench, who is also a really good option, who could potentially play where Heung-min Son plays. So I think this is where we kind of need to see a bit more from Spurs. It's still a new system. The manager is also getting used to his players, finding out what's right, what's wrong, who can work where. So you never know. There might be someone else who pops up who could be a really good option as well. So for now, while we think it's probably Madison as the best and maybe Richarlison second, maybe if Son is moved centrally, he becomes one. Maybe Solomon becomes an option if he's starting games. So if we give it a bit more time, obviously we'll be able to learn a bit more from United. But yeah, I think this is a team that kind of needs a few game weeks in to the Premier League before we know better.
Jen, what about Kane, Richarlison?
Yeah, so I think I agree that Spurs not going to get a new striker to replace Kane. So I think for the near future at least, it's probably going to be Richarlison playing up front. because he can't just say, oh yeah, one game now you're not playing striker anymore. So it's gonna at least a few games. But yeah, as Ryan said, I think it's wait and see for me. It's very easy to say Maddison is the best pick because he's got 2 assists, and yeah, both of them were kind of, you know, a little bit lucky, if you want to say that. Well, he's certainly very central to their attack. There's no doubt about that. But he's a clear better option than Richarlison. Maybe after that 1 week, yes, but 1 week is such a small sample size that I'm willing to give it a bit more time. Yeah.
So I'll just say the bit I put about Spurs is you said what I mentioned earlier, and what I put in the notes is just, yeah, Maddison can stand out easily with 2 assists, but they weren't, I said earlier, I called them like clean assists, common assists, right? And I don't think Maddison bossed the game. I don't think he looked particularly like he was going to score himself. We were hoping that if Kane stayed, we were going to sort of have that Maddison maybe going beyond Kane or playing next to Kane, but he's gone, and this is why they're a wait and see side up until game week 3 or 4 when the fixtures turn. But even then, you might still want to wait and see who does what in this side, because I still don't. Again, so I said earlier, some teams and players I felt I learned something from. Some I didn't, and I didn't learn that much because Brentford gave so much possession and space inside their own half, and Manchester United are not going to do that at all. They're not going to let Spurs play so high up. Brentford had a plan, and it paid off. So that it's going to be a completely different game to what it was from Brentford. Spurs are not going to be as dominant, and because what was it they had in terms of how much possession they had and the touches and the passes, you know, Spurs were way up there. But that's Brentford let them do it, and they were camped in the Brentford half. That's not going to be the same. So it's also the idea of adjusting to a new tactic with Big Ange and the things that players are going to do. This is going to be a really interesting match. Would I touch them in terms of FPL yet? Absolutely not for Spurs. When we talk about Manchester United, we'll talk about some other things, but looking exactly at Spurs now, we didn't learn a lot in game week 1 because Brentford let them play that way. Maddison didn't look like scoring, and he didn't have 2 particularly clean assists. We don't know if Richarlison's ready or going to step up to that central position. Heung-min Son was still very disappointing and quiet on that wing. I agree with Ryan. I think he'd do excellent down the middle and put maybe Solomon or even Richarlison on the wing. But this is going to be the perfect test for both of these sides because they're both under mass adjustments, and this is a race between the two sides to see who's going to get used to their own tactics first. Anything else, Lucian, on Spurs before we bump onto United?
Oh, the unfortunate thing is that no, really, because I think Spurs will be a completely different beast at home. So we should look forward to that because when you have 2 sides that are reliant on chaos in some sense at the moment, yeah, you're going to see lots of refereeing decisions, lots of controversy, and that is really what we truly should look forward to between Spurs and Man United games, because that's what they rely on: moments of brilliance, or moments of controversy, or moments of mistakes, massive errors.
All right, so then focus on United. So it's kind of like immovable object and unstoppable force. It's really difficult to predict this game. We can predict the lineups, we can predict sort of positions and roles, but how are these two sides going to go against each other? So United has this 2 number 8s plan with Bruno and Mount, and with Casemiro, the one defensively minded and covering. And that is the key issue. And it did get found out, I think, by Wolves' very energetic, stamina-driven, aggressive midfield, because Casemiro is class if he's got another defensive person next to him. That he doesn't have the legs or the speed to be that one covering midfield player. And Bruno can play anywhere, but his best position or where he's most useful is not in a deep position. You want him to be further up, playing through balls or shooting on goal, or even creeping into the box like a little fox, right? In this style, you've got Mount bombing forward, you've got Bruno having to sort of hesitate, and Casemiro, they if they had like classic old school Kante, that's perfect for this role and position. The one who's going to harry, who's going to be horizontal, across the pitch. Casemiro can't do that, and a few times the Wolves just got round him absolutely easily, and it's leaving Bruno in no man's land. He's not really up, he's not really back, and that also then creates that isolation between Rashford, who's starving because he's not got Bruno behind him. He's got Garnacho having a stinker on one side, and who's absolutely inside Semedo's pocket the entire game. They had a little bit of luck down the other wing with Anthony, but that's because Alt-Nouri can be found wanting a little bit defensively at times. So there's no cohesion yet between the midfield. Casemiro can't cover all that he needs to, and that's not his fault. He's been asked to do a lot. Mount is new to the side, so Mount and Bruno are learning to have that connection with each other, which they've not got yet. But the key here is there's no number 10. I saw so many times Bruno seemed to have the ball quite a way out of the box, and Mount would steam forward. But then, he's got to either spray it out to Garnacho or Anthony on one of the wings, or try and lump it forward to right. He's got no one to play with. So that's why you saw such a big difference that when Mount went off, and then you had Eriksen there, he's got, they can hold the ball really well as a nice triangle instead of just bombing forward. So Eriksen was the one who stayed back more permanently, and Bruno was given that license to get forward, and that changed it. And then I know the goal didn't come from that, but certainly there was an improvement in the performance. They just defensively were very, very lucky to get anything from the game. But we said about the defense is still pretty organized, but in terms of attack, they were one of the lower scoring top teams in the Premier League last season, and that doesn't look like changing it. And I think a big problem with this is Ten Hag, because he's such a my way or the highway kind of manager that there's obviously going to be a problem. Maybe it works out. Maybe Mount and Bruno get this wonderful connection. They can share. They start to mind read. Okay, he's going to go forward. I'll stay back now. I'll go forward. And we don't have that yet. And Ten Hag just strikes me as the kind of guy that says, we're going to do this 2 number 8s role, and Casemiro's going to be on that 6, and that is it. We're not going to do anything else. So defense-wise, they lost a lot of tackles, as I said earlier, but they still got a clean sheet. I think the defense is really, really good, but Casemiro is going to be the problem here, because he's not. If they keep with this Mount, Bruno, Casemiro midfield, they are going to get smashed, because if you've got a fast team or a pressing team, or you pack that midfield, you're taking the Manchester United attack out of the game, and you're putting them on the back foot. So equally, Wolves was very impressive. Gary O'Neill are going to make them a pain in the arse to play against, but part of that was definitely Manchester United's fault. Lucien, you want to talk about Man United?
I do need to reiterate that a lot of what we see in this upcoming Spurs Man United game will be 100% based on speculation, because neither side brought their A game, and it's very likely that both sides will make major tweaks for this upcoming game. So as much as I'd like to come up with various theories on what Wolves did well and what Man United didn't, I think we just have to go back to the plain facts that Ten Hag doesn't put blame on players, he puts blame on himself. And that's the system. His word is word. So at this stage, I think if you were to speculate how Man United play, don't look at it in terms of where players should fit and what players should do in order to do well. Look at what Ten Hag's approach is to winning games, because he does things quite simply too. It's just that he is very deliberate about how he does it. Like, if he sees that he's going to be up against a narrow formation, he'll go wide. If he sees that he's playing against a fast team, then he'll be slow. If he knows that he's playing against a deep team, then he'll go creative. Like, he really has a very simple approach, and it's just that he's very unpredictable himself to his supporters. So, as much as we like to speculate, right, for FPL purposes, we cannot. We just cannot. So, really, the less said, the better. And we just need to actually identify which player is likely to catch fire first. And I'm going to go against what you say here, Rob, but unfortunately, their best player on the pitch is Casemiro. He definitely needs a defensive midfielder behind him, but Casemiro was actually their best creator on the pitch, despite all of United's deficiencies. Yeah, but unfortunately, really, we should look at the other matchups too.
Ryan, Tien, you were both Manchester United fans, right?
Yeah.
So you guys will have more sort of emotions about this, me and I actually no, like I'm not saying Lucian's not impartial, but his Wolves was in the side. So he can feel a bit gutted. His team came away with nothing from that game, but I'm neutral. My team's stomping League One though. Bolton Wanderers, we're going all the way. See you in the Premier League soon. But Ryan, first Manchester United fan. How do you feel about this?
I agree with what you say with like Casemiro needs legs. And I think this is what like if in preseason Ten Hag was trying this with Kobe Mino, being that combative midfielder that will run around, and Casemiro can be like the master of the dark arts. When he needs to do a tackle, he'll do a tackle. But unfortunately he got injured, and I guess that's why the links of Amrabat and everything is coming. So we'll probably in the future, if they do manage to make that sign in, that's what you'll probably see. But that is not an option right now. So what we can play with is I still expect the same starting 11, apart from maybe Garnacho dropped, Rashford moved to the left because he's end of the day still United's most attacking threat. And I feel like we'll start to see maybe a Sancho appear in that false nine position, who played well in preseason in that can probably help link up play a bit more, and also do like the 1-2s with get Bruno involved, get Mason Mount involved. The other thing that you mentioned with regards to Bruno, where he just like goes so deep, he tends to do this when United don't have control of the game. He drops extremely deep to try and get the ball up and everything. And from an FPL point of view, we don't want that because that's not what we're buying him for. But unfortunately, he does that when United don't have control of the game. Now, the Spurs game, I feel like this is a game where both managers would like to have control of the game, but are not going to have it. So it's based on what is Ten Hag willing to give Spurs a bit of the ball and willing to counter or high press Spurs, and maybe that could work because Spurs' defense isn't the best as well. So maybe they could get at them, and this is where Mason Mount probably press in monster. So he could probably be beneficial in this specific game. But from an FPL point of view, it's going to be hard to read in terms of where the points are going to come from. It'll probably depend on a moment of magic, I guess.
It really is the battle of the midfield here, and this is where I think Manchester United are going to struggle, because you're going to have the likes of Maddison, Basuma, and whoever they choose as the third player to really be pressing all the time, and he will press. Like Big Ange gets his team working, and I think that has really made a key point. Like, you're exactly right. Bruno's the kind of player which you want as a football fan, right? We're not controlling this game. I'm the captain. I'm the big man. I'll go back. Give me the ball. I'm going to take this game by the, which is wonderful from a fan's point of view, right? Your players getting fed up with the play. He's going to throw himself in the thick of it. He's not just going to stand up front and be the creative midfielder. That's wonderful. But from a fantasy football point of view, that is exactly what you don't want your Bruno Fernandes. And I completely agree. And I literally said the same thing to Tien, who also had similar ideas about Sancho being down the middle and Rashford being pushed out to the wing. So, Tien, your thoughts on this one?
Sorry, real quick. Before Tien begins, I'm just going to let you guys know that I'm going to switch devices because this one's running out of battery. So I'll be right back.
Okay. Tien?
Yeah, so I, recently I joined the predictor team, right? So to predict Man United lineup, and I got the first game week spot on 11 out of 11, but I'm gonna struggle a little bit with game week 2. for all the reason that you've said, like it didn't seem to work very well. And so who's gonna fall out of that lineup? But I'm guessing Garnacho will probably drop out. But then is he going to put Sancho straight back in? And even with that sort of swapping him up front and Rashford to the left, I'm not sure that'll be that straightforward. Now, this is where, probably as a United fan, and I don't know whether Ryan agree with me or not, but we wish that Fred was still here. Because he could be, could be easily being put in and sort of play a bit more defensive and then do that hard work. Because every time he's on the field, he does that hard work, that run around and do all the tackles, so that Casemiro doesn't have to do everything by himself, and then Bruno can be released. But with Casemiro is the only sort of defensively minded player, and then the Mount and Bruno sort of double 8 formation, it didn't seem to work very well, and I don't know whether Ten Hag will just stick to that to see whether that'll work, or he will switch around. And I think last season, sometimes he switched Bruno to the wing. It didn't work really well, but I'm not discounting that what he might do as well. So he might take Garnacho off and put Bruno to the wing, and then put like McTominay in midfield or something. Like as much as we don't like McTominay to start, but if he need to boost up the defensive against the Spurs attacking assets, then maybe that's the way he will go. So it's going to be really tough to predict how Ten Hag's going to line up against Spurs, and that's going to be the key to whether Bruno and Rashford and how successful they will be for this game. Well, I think there will be goals, because I still think that Spurs, in terms of their defensive performance and the new keeper, didn't really instill a lot of confidence. So I think there will be goals on both sides. But yeah, the question is who's going to score those goals. It's probably going to be a tricky question to answer.
The conclusion point is I predict 3 goals or more. I don't know where they're going to be. It could be 3-0, could be 2-1, could be 2-2. I think there's going to be at least 3 goals, and but this game is highlighted as our first one because it's so key in terms of FPL, because this is going to be the big mover. If Bruno is deep again and blanks, and Rashford's not looking up to scratch, and a lot of people are rolling their transfers, and they're going to be sat there with 2 free transfers, potentially doing a -4 as well. There's going to and Spurs do well. Richarlison kicks off. I think this is going to give people a big Manchester United to Spurs swing if they've still not got the hang of it, despite having Nottingham Forest at home the week after that. So we'll move on to the next one. The one that Lucian will be happy with in terms of surprise packages, the one that happily surprised us, because we're looking at Wolves against Brighton. So, Lucian, Wolves first. How are you feeling? What do you think about Wolves?
Well, I'm going to be practical about this. Sorry about the volume if it's a bit loud. I'm going to go with the saying, the more things change, the more things stay the same. You can swap out Ruben Neves, you can sell Adama Traore, Raul Jimenez, Diego Costa. You can swap out all those guys. We still have the same strengths and the same weaknesses at the back. We are extremely error-prone. I cannot recount how many times we gave the ball away to Manchester United's attacking midfielders. And Brighton will capitalize on that. I think Brighton will implement a high press because he recognizes that weakness, and they will try and capitalize Nelson Semedo's weak side, because I think United didn't exactly attack very well down their right. We gave a lot of stuff to Garnacho. And sure, Garnacho didn't take advantage, but it doesn't mean that Brighton's left won't. So Mitoma owners will certainly be happy. But yeah, it really is like what we've talked about in our Brighton video earlier in the season, Rob. How do you punish Wolves' weaknesses? And Wolves' weaknesses are not their left, but their right. As long as Brighton do not attack through the center, everything will profit down the left. So hold on to your Estupinians, hold on to your Mitomas. I mean, no one's going to really buy them anyway. But I think really right now, all I can say, at least from a Wolves perspective, is to, those 2 names that I mentioned in preseason, Matheus Cunha, Matthias Nunes, watchlist them right now. Because the moment we want to jump off Joao Pedro, well, Matthias Cunha is there at the same price, isn't he? So I think in terms of matchup, what we can discuss right now is besides Mitoma and Estupinian, would we be looking at any other players that would score big if we weren't looking at Joao Pedro? I think we can talk about March as well, potentially.
So
yeah, over to you, Rob.
So sticking. So we'll go through Wolves, then we'll go through Brighton. So for Wolves, shocked me. As always, massively underrated them. I mean, come on, a couple of days before the season starts, the manager walks out. They've got all these off-field problems, but blindsided because talent-wise, they've got it. They've got a really, really good team. And the only reason, and I'm not like joking when I say like I've got Varane in my side, was exactly the reason that I said it'll be the big problem for Wolves, and that's having a player to stick the ball in the back of the net. And it's why I went for a Manchester United defender and why I fancied Varane, because defensively set up really well. They've got real talent and potential in midfield. Who was the one that he said Pep said was going to be world class? Was that Nunes?
Yeah, Matthias Nunes.
Right? Huge potential. Cunha, I said that it was going to be like a 4-3-1-2 or a 4-3-3 with him down the middle. He's 5.5 million, right, in FPL, is he? And, you know, they've got talent, they've got potential, but they just... I said earlier, Gary O'Neill's going to make him a real difficult side to work against, difficult to break down. They're going to hit teams really, really well on the counter-attack. They just, ever since Raul Jimenez's head injury, they've not replaced that goal scorer. I mean, Cunha had Manchester United like bread and butter. He was absolutely mauled them. And any other night, they would have... Ryan, you said earlier they had like over 2 XG in the second half or something like that? 2.07.
Yeah.
You know, if they've got a player to put the ball in the back of the net, they're going to be easy mid-table. And I was having them fighting down near the bottom, and that's completely on me. I didn't think they'd get relegated, but I thought they'd struggle. But I thought they were absolutely incredible. And I think they've lost that manager who I had no particular feelings towards. I didn't particularly think he was exciting or great. I do think Gary O'Neill is the kind of manager that would be perfect for this side, will fit those players really well, will get them working and pushing. They've got the legs. So I think it's not as woeful as I thought it was going to be for Wolves. And I think this is why I've got a benching headache, because I've got Eze at home to Arsenal, but I don't think this is going to be... This isn't the same Brighton performance like it was against Luton, right? Because they're not going to play Luton every week. Tien, thoughts on Wolves? Without hating them because of how difficult they made your life in in the game.
Yeah, no, I don't think I have much to add. I agree with a lot of things that you've said. Yeah, they've got a lot of talents in the team, and it can put up a lot of good chances, but yeah, they just didn't have anyone to finish them. So that's gonna be their problem. Yeah, we'll have to see how they go. In terms of FPL, I'm not looking at anyone. If I don't think anyone will be looking at anyone from Wolves for now. So I think it'll be more interested to see how we treat the Brighton assets again, Wolves.
And Ryan, anything to add about Wolves?
Well, they looked really compact in the United game. So I guess kudos to that, because that means that they're not going to concede too many. Or at least, even though the XG numbers were high, they won't concede too many because of the way they defend as a unit. But again, if you can't put the ball in the net, it's going to be a problem. And I think they need to address that.
So, going on to Brighton, I said I don't think we learned a lot from them. They had 27 shots, 20 of them from inside the box. They were gifted chances through mistakes or general lack of quality from them. And I really don't think we'll know until after this game or after sort of game week 3 or game week 4 how Brighton are going to really cope with the loss of McAllister and Caicedo, because Luton did nothing to let us know how that is going to affect the side. So the heart of Brighton, I don't mean the soul. I mean like the middle of the heart of midfield has gone. Caicedo's gone. McAllister's gone. McAllister was a loss, but they've got people to replace him. Caicedo's loss will be felt when they finally play against teams that are going to give them a challenge. And we saw from
Can
that
I weigh in then? Can I weigh in on that?
yeah, just one sec. Just
Yeah.
we saw from the Chelsea Liverpool game just how key that position and that player is. And I think when they come against maybe not Wolves, and I don't mean this in a negative thing for Wolves, but he's going to be the critical loss from that for me. So again, not too much learnt from Brighton until we see them in the next sort of 2 or 3 game weeks, where people probably start to sell them when fixtures get tricky. But we'll see. Lucian, what do you say about Brighton?
I just want to make a quick note that against Luton, Brighton they started Dahoud and Pascal Gross in central midfield. And the way they dominated Luton was that they actually shifted James Milner from right back into midfield to make a midfield 3. So if they do that against Wolves, Wolves will almost certainly not use the same trick against Manchester United. Because with Man United, if you notice, Wolves did not have a left winger. They had Pedro Neto on the right, but Nunes usually would play left winger, and as Ryan said, he would tuck in centrally to outnumber Man United's midfield. That was literally how we smashed them, and we've used that time and time again last season already. And I do feel that if we go up against Brighton's midfield, we will actually take to the flanks and we will punish Estupinian instead. So look out for Pedro Neto in this game. He will shine, but it will likely be like a flash in the pan. And yeah, that's pretty much what we should look out for.
I think you've made a real key point, and I don't have Estupiñán, and I'm not looking at him because it's all well and good. Everyone's there. He's gone up in price. They're all saying he's a left winger. This is incredible. He's essential. You must have him. I'm an idiot because I don't have him. He's playing left wing against Luton. You get a good winger against him. Like who's he going to be against on that side? Who's going to be on the right side for you? Neto. Neto's not going to give him the time of day down that side. And if it's the left wing of Estupiñán and Semedo, because you're more defensive minded on the right side with Semedo on the right side, he's not going to give him the time of day either. Now, if it was the other side, if it was an Alt-Nouri on that side, I'd be here saying Estupiñán is probably going to have another great time. But he's going to have to be running away from Neto. And then he's going to come against Semedo, who's just had Garnacho in his back pocket against Man United. So people are calling for that. Any more Brighton points that you guys want to say before we move on to West Ham Chelsea?
Just a very quick one, Rob.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, right. Just a very quick one. Like, once again, people look at Estupiñán and see how attacking he was, how many chances he got against Luton, and say, you must get him now. But that was the game that you should have got him for, right? You missed the best game out of the 3 games that Brighton have before their fixtures sort of turned bad. So, is it too late to buy him? Probably not too late, but it's late enough for you to say, well, I'm not going to get someone who I will have to be thinking about selling in 2 game weeks' time. And you missed the best attacking possibility, even though he didn't get all the returns that he should have. But even then, it's kind of like you missed the boat, in my opinion. So yeah.
Ryan,
yeah, he's
Brighton,
not going to get those attacking returns. He's not going to be able to bomb for that much because you said Neto. The next game after that is West Ham, and he's got Jared Bowen to deal with as well. So that's another key matchup there as well that he'll have to kind of figure out. In general, Brighton, we know what we're going to get from them. If you have them, keep them for now. And then I guess we reassess when it comes to game week 4.
Yeah, pretty standard moves for Brighton. I predict a quite low scoring game. Brighton probably dominating possession and Wolves looking to battle. But the key battle is going to be on the wings, which I think we've pointed out. It's going to be down the flanks. It's going to be like Matoma and March against Alt-Nouri and Semedo. But do you think, just one final point then, Lucian, as a Wolves fan, do you think Alt-Nouri will keep his place on the left side, or you think they'll try and counter the March Matoma wingers and maybe stick in Totti or...
No, actually, doesn't matter who we put at left back, but it's who we put at left wing that matters more. We will have Podence probably on the left wing to punish that flank.
If he's out the doghouse, because he's had a little bit of a sulk this summer, hasn't he? So going on to well, one of these two teams we're going to be really focusing on, I think, more than the other, and that is West Ham and Chelsea. Chelsea are going to be really, really popular from this game week. I think they really surprised us happily after 30-minute mark. We've already talked a lot about Pochettino. I thought Pochettino had a blinding game, which is a weird thing to say, but I think Pochettino had a great game. Jackson getting nothing, but looking incredibly lively. Chilwell, the now injured James. So Gusto at 4 million might be, pulling some eyes over to a 4 million playing defender potentially. I just as a side, then I'm thinking of the double up, but now James is out. I was going to hold off anyway because I just think Gallagher was fantastic in a position he's not natural for. He did wonderful. And if you've seen in any of my Twitter posts, I've been asking Chelsea fans and I've been saying, is there a chance that Caicedo comes into the middle with Enzo and then I'm not going to butcher his name. What's the young Chelsea player?
Chukwuemeka.
Chukwuemeka.
And just call him Kearney. Go by his first name. Just call him Kearney.
Kearney. We all know who I'm talking about, right? Is there a chance Gallagher goes there and we get that Crystal Palace 5.5 million Gallagher would be lovely. But what could even be more lovelier, because probably man of the match was Enzo Fernandez. He's so silky. He's so smooth. Release the beast. Let him free. Let him push up. 5 million. He'll be in everyone's teams. I think he could be a real surprise, but really, really happy with this. If I was a Chelsea fan, I'd be smiling, not because of all the money that they've spent, but just the way that they played. They were unlucky not to get the win. And in this one, we'll talk about West Ham a little bit after the Chelsea part, but you got, I think, double minimum. If you're not got at least like Chilwell, which most people have, but I think Jackson, I started the season with him because I believed in him. He's, again, lessons we learn or didn't learn from. I felt I learned from that first game against Liverpool that Jackson is going to be perfectly fine as my 7 million striker, and I'm happy that sort of prediction is going to pay off, and I don't think he's going to get dropped. So, Lucian, thoughts? Chelsea.
Well, I mean, I think we have to be safe to say that Reece James was a massively integral part of their game plan against Liverpool. So without Reece James, things are going to change massively. So I'd rather cater to West Ham's weakness rather than Chelsea's strengths. So against Bournemouth, West Ham had this problem where their 4-4-2 was extremely wide because they did not have Declan Rice. So you imagine West Ham as a 4-4-2 or 4-4-1-1 sort of thing, right? With Antonio up there, with his wingers behind him and his central midfielders and whatnot. So if you have Pablo Fornals and Thomas Souček managing that space in the middle, right? They tend to be a little bit too static, and they allowed the likes of Solanke to actually get outside the centre backs for shots. This is exactly Nicholas Jackson territory. So I think in that sense, we will all be seeing Nicholas Jackson getting a lot of shots. And secondly, I do feel that West Ham right now do still lack a lot of control between the defense and midfield. So any attacking midfielder that gets into that space, similar to the way Enzo Fernandez did against Liverpool, is going to be absolutely profiting. I think Ben Chilwell is probably going to have a quiet game because he'll be up against 2 defenders instead of 1, because no one defends Liverpool's right side, right? But in terms of actual chance creation in open play, we're going to see Chelsea use that right side a lot more than we think. So yeah, Malo gusto. Good punt. Very, very good punt if you don't have a third Chelsea attacker as of now.
So yeah, before we go on to West Ham then, so Tien, any points you want to add on about Chelsea?
Yeah, no, not much more. I think once again, like obviously, we watched the first game and Chilwell was very attacking, and James on the other side slightly less, but he, nevertheless was going up as well. But now he's out, and whether Posh gonna turn back to the sort of like the 4 for kind of 4-4-2 formation rather than 3 at the back and Chilwell bombing forward is yet to be seen. So I think, probably a good idea to temper expectation a little bit because, I mean, yeah, obviously Chilwell is a great option. No one's going to argue about that. But it feels like, people are making it like Chilwell is going to be like this wonderful attacking, left wing who's going to, have like millions of chances every game. I don't think it will be the case. So yeah, it's probably just a good idea to temper the expectation a little bit and he's a good option, but if you don't have
He's not going to do it every week.
Easy way, yeah, and if you don't have a good way to get to him because you miss out on the price changes, right, or whatever, like now you can't afford him, I think it's perfectly fine to wait for another week because the Chelsea fixture run is brilliant until game week 8 at least, I think. So if you can't get him this week and if you can roll the transfer and then next week you can get him as part of a double move, it's perfectly fine. I would not get him for a hit, for example.
Just like mentioned about Estupian, right? It's not going to be... Chilwell was there because of the combat to the Trent threat. There's no Trent threat against West Ham, so he's probably going to be... Yeah, he'll get forward, but he's not going to be left wing because he was left wing, right? Ryan, last little point about Chelsea before I have a stab at West Ham.
The Malagusto shout could be good, but DRC can also potentially play right back. So I would kind of keep that in mind as well, especially if Poch wants to do these 3 at the back when they have the ball. Then DRC kind of fits for that, where you play Colwell, DRC, and Thiago Silva. So might want to keep that in note potentially before going to a 4 million Malagusto. Also, Enzo Fernandez, 5 million. Oh yes, please release the beast. I need a Garnacho replacement, so I'm here for it. If he does end up becoming the one.
Yes, that's gonna be the one. Like I've said about Eze, I've got him, but if there's gonna be a player, if it's that position in the Chelsea team, and it's Gallagher or Enzo, and I've already said it. Release the beast. If it's Enzo, he's gonna
also. Now that Reece James is injured, that kind of knocks out another potential penalty taker from Chelsea's team.
And he goes to Enzo. Yeah, because he has a perfect record. Look, I'm just saying it. It's Enzo. Release the beast. Once he's there, it's going to be great. West Ham. Let me just. So this was the last video. Was this the last one we did, Lucian? West Ham's the last one, right? In the summer.
No, Wolves was the last one.
one.
WO after WE, yeah.
Yeah. And I just thought the reason why is because it was such a blur at the end of pre-season when we were smashing out all these videos, and West Ham was just the one where it was like, this is just not a team worth talking about. Because I saw someone online, and I can't remember who it was, but I thought they summed it up perfectly. West Ham set up like a counter-attacking side that doesn't counterattack. Like there's no creativity. Now there's a lack of plan B. We talked about this in pre-season that there's no plan B. They've got no one they can put on who you think, this guy's going to come on and change the game. They've replaced Rice with Alvarez. The defense is fine, but creatively speaking, in attack, it's weak and thin, especially if Paqueta goes to Man City now. They'll have no creative midfielders or at least creative midfield depth. Now, James Ward-Prowse has joined, and he is a great, hard-working central midfielder, but where's the pace? Where's the attacking midfield link? Where's the creativity coming from? You go beyond the midfield up front, you've got Antonio, who runs around a lot and gets injured. And you got Ings, who's a fantastic finisher, but if no one puts it on a plate for him, he's not going to score your goals. They had a team XG of 1.07. They had one shot on target in the box, and Bowen's goal came from range with an XG of 0.036. They had 37% possession against Bournemouth. Now, I'm not trying to put Bournemouth down, but come on, 37% against Bournemouth. And their pass success rate was 67.8%. So not only did they only have 37% possession, their pass success rate was less than 68%. So even when they do have the ball, they're giving the ball away. There's nothing positive beyond the defense about this West Ham attack. And I would put West Ham up there as one of the easiest teams to predict the tactics of. There's no flexibility. It feels like every game and every situation they're in, the opposition are going to be able to read it, plan, and prepare for it without breaking a sweat. They're going to rely on individual moments of class from the likes of Bowen or like a set piece or a set piece threat like Souček, rather than actually having some sort of different or interesting plans. And I think that's it for me in West Ham. Lucian, thoughts on West Ham?
I think we are sleeping on them a little bit. We'll have to wait because Chelsea, I think, will see them go back to their counter-attacking tactics. But the reason West Ham had so little possession was because they took the lead quite early. They did pretty well against Bournemouth's tactics, actually. And yes, the chances they create are still low quality, but the movement by Pablo Fornals, the true replacement for Declan Rice, was what made West Ham a little bit special. I don't foresee them doing the same thing against Chelsea, but we should look beyond that, Like, I mean, I really don't want to spend too much time talking about West Ham because whoever we push isn't going to be picked up by people anyway, So I can't even recommend a name for watch list, unlike Wolves, right? Who's gonna listen to a Antonio Benrahma or a Bowen pick even? Like, no one. So we should just let it be. If you have Bowen, congratulations on your point, but we should just let it be.
Jen, anything about Wolves?
No, I agree with
West Ham.
Lucian. Yeah, West Ham. Yeah, no. Yeah, nothing relevant for FPL. I think it will just be watch it and see how they play, and perhaps pick assets from other teams that plays against them, depending on what we see. So, Bowen probably gonna become an option at some point, but yeah, probably not straight away. Given that we got so many other good options that we can pick from.
Ryan, any final point? West Ham, big fan.
Nothing really. I would have initially said that if James would have been a good option, because I think they considered a lot of chances down that right flank, West Ham, in the Bournemouth game. But now that James is out, so there goes that. And I'm not going to recommend Sterling at all. So in terms of getting West Ham players, probably second international break, their fixtures turn, then we might think about it, but not for now.
Well, so the last matchup is City Newcastle. We talked about them before. If you guys want to have any notes on this, but for me, simple one is City is always going to rotate. Haaland's always, usually going to be our captains. If you want to take a punt on an Alvarez or Foden, feel free, but you're going to probably get hurt at some point. If you want to choose one of the defenders, they've got like 6 of them now for 3 positions. Good luck with that. But it'll be interesting for me to watch Newcastle to see, are they going to play like they did against Villa? Are they going to set up offensively? But again, City rotate too much for my liking. There's plenty of other options out there. Newcastle, I'm not going to be looking until game week 5 or 6 when their fixtures turn. But in terms of a match, for me, it's going to be great. But if you guys have points you want to say about City or Newcastle, so Lucian, I'll start with you.
I'm just going to be concise and say that this is the game where we fear Analytics FC because this game absolutely suits Ederson. I cannot state enough how much City is pushing innovation so much that they don't even need a goalkeeper. Like against Newcastle's high press, Villa really struggled because their central midfielders, Tonali and Joel Linton, pressed so cohesively with the front 3 that Villa couldn't cope. You have 4 defenders against 5 attackers pressing you. It's crazy. But I do feel that City have the edge, and it all comes down to Ederson's passing quality, no matter who they have at the back. There will likely be a big chance created from an Ederson clearance, and I hope it doesn't find Haaland because I'm capping Salah this week. But I feel that Julian Alvarez for me is the one that got away. I wish I had money to own Haaland and Alvarez from the start, but it is his time to shine because I just do not foresee anyone else running beyond Haaland, right? Getting behind him beyond the back line from a long clearance to get big chances. So that's really my pick.
Jen, any points City Newcastle?
Yeah, so probably easy to say that Newcastle looked great against Villa, and then a lot of people have been trying to get their attacking assets, but yeah, probably it's very safe to say that they definitely not going to have those spaces and chances to against City, and so nothing from Newcastle in terms of FPL. I would not recommend buying anyone. So I put out the top 10 transfer, in my tweet the other day, and Isaac was obviously, in the top, and I say, yeah, he's a clear avoid for now, in my opinion. Yeah, in terms of City, yeah, try to predict Pep and who's going to start. I think Haaland's probably going to start again. Despite that, playing 90 minutes in the Super Cup game, I think when he's fit, he start. And Pep is not going to put out a weaker side against Newcastle because it's too early in the season to do that sort of massive rotation. So I think that he's going to put out the strongest 11, and I'm hoping that Foden will be part of that because I own Foden. Obviously I knew what I was getting into. I wouldn't be surprised if he's not in the team sheet. But I've made my bed, and I'm gonna sleep in it for at least for a couple of weeks. But yeah, I'm really strong on Alvarez as well. Because without KDB, he's probably amongst the strongest 11 to start. Obviously, it depends on where he plays and where Foden plays as well, and who is going to miss out, because I think one of Bernardo Silva, Foden, Alvarez, and Grealish is going to have to miss out, right? They can't play them all.
Palmer.
So and Palmer. Well, yeah, probably not Palmer because he played in the cup just then. So I think he's probably one that you got your time.
He likes to give
legs.
Now,
I know. You can't. Yeah. You would like to think that we can get into Pep's head, but we can't. We've learned that hard lessons a long time ago. So yeah, I'm very strong, very bullish on Alvarez, given that he got a big rest. He only came on like at 85th minute or something, right? So if I would recommend to buy anyone at this stage, it would probably be going to be him.
Or could touch about him later. So Ryan, last point. City.
If you have City players like Stones, Foden, Haaland, just keep them, play them. The most likely start Stones as well, probably.
Stones is injured.
That was a knock, right? That he picked up
No,
I don't know if he's fully.
Is
he fully injured?
Oh, that was with the news that
so much
came
for
out with Stones is just John Stones has injured his hamstring in training and will be unavailable for the game against Newcastle. Yes, he's back in training and should be available.
All right, there you go. Okay, so no Stones. But if you have Foden, I also went and got Foden on the deadline day rush. So I don't mind starting him. It seems like in the cup he played where KDB would probably play. At least that's what it looks like from the average positions, but I'm not really sure. And so I'm expecting Bernardo to play where Cole Palmer played. But if you have your players, keep them there. End of the day, it's a really good team from City.
You guys
and
are
Newcastle,
so cute with your predictions of who Pep Guardiola is going to play.
We think we can analyze it, but you can't.
No,
so just give up.
He'll
and
turn
just
around.
Play who you have.
He'll play the same 11 he's just played. He'll play John Stones injured. He'll just be like, I'm going to really get into Newcastle's head. He put like a plaster cast on his leg and just stick him in the middle and really get into the minds. Every single time. Now, we'll try. We don't want it to be too long. We're new. The style of the show's new. This segment coming up is going to be a weekly one. We'll be a little bit faster because we're a bit tired. It's getting a little bit late. But we'll do some tweaks to the show to make it a little bit shorter for you and for us. But this is a part where every game week we're given a position. So defender, midfielder, forward, and wild card. Wild card can choose any player, any position. And we rotate. So defender this week is Ryan. I'm midfielder. Lucian is the forward, and Tien's the wild card. And you just move down the order. So Ryan is a defender this week. Next week, Ryan will be the midfielder. The week after that, he'll be the forward, and so on. And we are tracking this in a Google Sheets, because I always say about keeping receipts that I hate it when a content creator will sit there and say, oh, guys, Diaby's fantastic. He's amazing. Bring him in. And then next week when he does nothing, I'll never talk about it again, right? So no, we're not that kind of show. We're not those kind of people. If we're going to suggest some players, we're going to say how we're going to do, right? If it's a success or not. We did talk a bit preseason that this isn't just based on points. Now, if after 4 weeks, our pick has got lots of points, they've probably done all right, very, very good. But let's say Ryan's pick that he's going to talk about gets one good game, 3 bad scores. But we've watched the games and we've analysed it. They've hit the bar 10 times. They've been fouled for penalties, but the person taking the penalty has missed every single time, right? It's not as black and white on this show as they only got 6 points in 4 games. Ryan failed. It's not about that, right? It's not about the outcome. It's about how did they play, and it's the decision before. So just as a caveat or a point for that, success for us is based not just on how many points that they scored, but also, was it a good pick? Have you got unlucky? Not just in terms of, that they underperformed their XGI by 3.07 or something. It's also we watched the game and it was a clear unlucky, or they played great, right? So Ryan, we're going to start with you because you're the defender. Not gonna. I think a lot of these picks aren't going to shock people, but
yeah. Well, it's a defender pick. I want my bread and butter, so it's clean sheets. So I'm going with Chilwell, top of the season ticker for Chelsea for the next until game week 8. And obviously Chilwell is my main pick, but I will add, if anyone can't afford a Chilwell, I do like a Rico Henry. Their fixtures are decent. But yeah, Chilwell. And
that's a fair point. We've talked a lot about Chilwell. He's a fantastic option. Let's not forget the Twitter bubble. He is only 18.6% owned. So people will say, I've had a pop at, I mentioned content creators having the same back 3, right? And Chilwell was in there. Only 18.6%. So to recommend him, and we're doing this over 4 game weeks because we feel that's sort of how long you should at least have a player for. We're not here giving you, if we're going to sit here and tell you a Nottingham Forest player is a great pick because they've got Sheffield United at home, and then they've got United the week after, and we'll never talk about them again, what's the point? So these are players that we would consider bringing into our own sides, and it's for at least sort of 4 game weeks, and Chilwell's a fantastic shout. Probably my transfer as well this week because of that Reece James news. I'm going for Diaby. 3 attempts in the box, 2 on target, 1 goal. Should have had probably an assist from Watkins as well, which you won't really see in the stats, but Watkins missed a pretty easy chance. Now factor in the fact that they were dominated and smashed 5-1. So imagine what Villa can do with Diaby up front next to Watkins in a game where they're not getting smashed, basically. At times he's striker. He's 6.5 million, so he's 1.5 million cheaper, and he's a midfielder than Watkins. His average position was more central, and people thought that I think was it Bailey who was playing, so people thought that he'd be playing on the wing when he came on, but he didn't. He's more central. I always thought it was a 4. In our preseason, I think I put 4-4-2. Is that right, Lucian? For Aston Villa.
You're spot on. Diaby is striker alongside Watkins.
So he's out of position, 6.5 midfielder. He's got Everton, Burnley, which is lovely. He's got Liverpool, which if they're going to play a high line, he's so fast. And Liverpool are still so bad defensively that that's not a scary game to play him in. And then Crystal Palace. So 4 great fixtures. He's up front. He's out of position. All of them he could score in. I think the Villa Newcastle is just, it's not going to happen all the time. I don't think Villa are a bad team. I think they just got it tactically wrong, and they weren't quite right. Maybe they were even shook by the Mings injury, but they weren't particularly great before that. And I actually relish him against that Liverpool defense because straight speeds, he's going to be in behind them so many times. So Diaby is my pick for the next 4 weeks. Up front, Lucian.
Right, here we go. Let's keep things simple and pick Erling Haaland's rival, Nicholas Jackson. I mean, really, I'm looking at the fixtures and I'm looking at key individual matchups here. Jackson has, among them, Luton and Forest at home. The no-brainer. I mean, not just taking advantage of the player qualities of both defenses, but more of the West Ham and Bournemouth away as well. You see, the thing about Jackson is that like you play this number 9 spot, and I think what we underrate about Jackson is his all-rounded ability. Like Jackson had the courage to stand up 1v1 body Van Dijk. He could take the ball past players. He links up well with Chilwell, and I think it's been such a long while, right, since we've seen a legit Chelsea number 9 making near post runs and finishing at the near post. I know he didn't do it against Liverpool, but one of the big chances that Reece James created for him
Close.
is that very near post run that he just blazed over. But like, I've not seen a number 9 do that since who? I can't even remember.
Probably Drogba.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All
It's
that
crazy.
time ago.
It's there. Yeah.
Some of us,
4 games.
some of us thought Jackson was going to be the number 9 and the big star striker. I mean, some of us had him from game week 1. I'm not too sure who. Just
Me.
yeah, just us. Yeah, basically. 15.9% also believe in him, but fantastic pick. He's already mentioned it earlier, but Tien could have chosen anyone in the game. Now, actually, Lucy made a funny joke, but I realised we could have just every week sat here and said Haaland as forward. So next week, guys, I'm forward. So Haaland is going to be my pick next week. So Tien, any player in the entire game from any position. You've gone for a goalkeeper. No, I'm joking. Go on. Who's your wild pick? Who's your wild card pick?
Yeah. Actually, it wasn't as easy as you would think, because I could pick anyone in the game, and I had to wait for you three to pick to make your picks before I can pick anyone, right? Because I can't pick the same players that you picked. So yeah, it wasn't that easy. I thought about Diaby as well. I thought about Jackson as well, and obviously Chilwell was the obvious one. But I touched on him already. I'm gonna pick Alvarez. So normally, for my pick, or the way that I normally pick players, we're looking for the next 3 or 4 game weeks at least. But I would try to pick nail starter for one of the key factors, being a nail starter, and preferably playing 90 more often than not, and obviously playing for a good team with good features in the next 3 or 4 game weeks. So Alvarez doesn't tick all of those boxes because he's played for Man City and he's subject to Pep Roulette. But I think with KDB out, he has to be in contention to start most games, as I've already mentioned earlier. I believe he's the strongest, or in the strongest 11. The next 4 fixtures include Newcastle at home, Fulham at home, Sheffield United away, and West Ham away. So very decent fixture. It will be hard to see him not getting involved in any attacking goals or assists. Against Burnley, he already bagged 1.76 XGI and an assist, got an assist for that. And more importantly, he played 90 minutes. So last season, whenever we saw that he started, he played an average of 84 minutes. So, and then that's a Pep thing, right? Whoever starts generally play, the whole game. And he whenever he started, he posted really good underlying stats as well. And finally, having been well rested again at the Super Cup game yesterday, I would be shocked. I would be shocked if he's not starting on the weekend. But obviously, I'll have to eat my words if he's on the bench. And yeah, I think he will likely start more often than not in the next 4 game weeks. So therefore, I'm going for him.
Yep. So we've got Chilwell, Diaby, Jackson, and Alvarez as our 4 players for the next 4 game weeks. So next week we'll be looking at game weeks 3, 4, 5, 6, and we'll move down positions. But we will come back in, because this is the first week. In 4 weeks we will come back and just have a quick look over to see. It'll be a group decision if it was successful or not. Remember, it's not just based on, he got, they could have got 2 goals in those 4 games, but had absolute stinkers. It bounced off the back of the head and went in. It could have been anything, but that'll be very, very, very unlikely that if they've got lots of points, they didn't do a good job. But there we go. We're not going to talk about captain. Anyone but Salah? No? Salah, number 1 captain choice.
Salah.
You 3 all have Salah, so look at me. I've got Salah.
Why overthink it? Why overthink it?
Salah's clearly number 1. Haaland's probably clearly maybe number 2. You can look at Rashford, you can look at Saka, but it's clearly Salah this week. Don't have to talk about it.
I think Watkins could be a shout as well.
Because of Everton at home.
Because of Everton at
home.
But
look, we're in a situation where the only thing that would tear me away from Haaland is if I had Salah. Because his effective ownership is probably, instead of being 199% effective ownership, he might be like 180% effective ownership. So it's still even though you guys will be comfortable, that Martinez meme where it's like, you're laughing, but you're scared, aren't you? That's exactly what this is, where it's like, you can sit there and laugh. You've got Salah and he's captain, but you are going to watch that Newcastle City game and you are going to be thinking, oh dear, I'm still worried.
Sorry, Rob. I just have to say that Salah's ownership right now is 29.4%. So his highest EO potentially can only come up to 60%.
So there you go. So Haaland is still probably going to be... Well, Haaland is 90.8% owned now. So even if you have both, like you guys do, so you're saying that really so he's probably still minimum going to be like, what, 120? Minimum.
It's fine. I burned myself last season when I captained Salah and while Haaland was playing against United. I was like, it's a tough fixture for Haaland. It's fine. It happened.
But
he scored a hat-trick. But
I do think Salah, if I had Salah, I'd captain him. He's the best choice. It's absolutely clear. But, it is that meme of like, you're worried, aren't you? Because if you've not got Salah, play your own way. I'll always say play it your own way. I bench boosted in game week 1. It wasn't, I was considering a -4 to bring Salah in. But if you don't have Salah and you do want to go for a Watkins, for example, it pays off great. But don't go around blaming other people or having a big sulk because Haaland's probably got 1 goal and Salah might have 1 goal and your guy blanked and you've gone from 1.5 million to 7 million because... Haaland's got a goal and you're sat there with, 12 points less than everyone else or whatever. So just bear in mind the mental aspect of this game. And if you're comfortable to go for a Rashford or a Watkins or a Trent captain or something like that, fine. But make sure you can mentally deal with that. But Salah is clear number 1. Thanks for joining us this week. Oh, any final points before we say goodbye? We can go. No,
it's not the end of the world. It's only game week 2. Still a long way to go.
Only game week 2, and this is the last time I'll be inside the top 3,000. I'll tell you that for free. But yeah, thanks a lot for watching, everyone. Fantastic to see some people join again. Hopefully, people join us again next week. We'll make it a little bit shorter than this, but we're still learning together. We're still tweaking some stuff, but still great for me. So thanks a lot for joining. Have a great game week 2, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.